Welcome to Voice of Family. Sometimes, the people we least expect become the ones who save us. Sometimes, family isn't written in blood, it is written in kindness, sacrifice, and love we never saw coming. My story began on a cold Thursday morning, right after my life had completely fallen apart. I never imagined that a man living behind an old wooden fence would change everything for me and my sons, or that he would become the family we desperately needed. My name is Sheila Marwick, and 3 months ago, I packed everything I owned into a rusty blue minivan and left the city where I had lived my entire adult life. My marriage had collapsed in the most painful way possible: betrayal, manipulation, broken trust, the kind that leaves your heart bruised and your mind exhausted. All I had left were my 2 boys, Riven and Daxon, who depended on me more than ever. I told myself I had to be strong, even when I felt like I was breaking inside. The town of Willowbrook Heights was quiet, too quiet for someone used to noise drowning out her thoughts. The small rental house I found was old, crooked on one side, and smelled faintly of paint and lemon cleaner. But it was all I could afford after the separation drained my savings. Bills stacked up faster than I could open them. I tried not to let the boys see me cry at night, but sometimes tears slipped out when I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ruined their lives by leaving. The first week, I kept to myself. I didn't want to meet anyone, didn't want questions, didn't want pity. I would rush the kids to school, work long hours at a local diner, come home exhausted, and collapse on the couch while the boys did homework. I didn't even look at the fence separating my yard from the neighbors, an old gray structure that looked like it had more stories than the houses in the whole street. Then one morning, something unusual happened. When I opened the door to take out the trash, a small wooden basket sat on my porch. Inside it were bright red apples, perfectly washed, along with a tiny handwritten note. From the garden. Fresh and sweet. H. I looked around awkwardly, unsure if it was meant for me or accidentally placed. The street was empty. The boys grabbed the apples and ate them without hesitation, laughing like they hadn't tasted real fruit in ages. Something in my chest softened. The next day, another basket appeared. This time, oranges. Then peaches. Then tomatoes. The handwriting on each note was shaky but neat. I finally asked around and learned that the house beside ours belonged to Mr. Aldrich Harris, an elderly widower known for keeping to himself. Some said he'd lost his wife years ago and his grown sons hardly visited him. Others whispered about old family disputes and secrets buried deeper than his garden soil. One afternoon, as I pulled into the driveway after work, I saw him for the first time. Mr. Harris stood near the fence trimming roses, tall, thin, with silver-white hair and gentle eyes that carried a quiet sadness. When he noticed me staring, he gave a polite nod. I hesitated before walking over, holding the empty fruit basket in my hands like a peace offering. "Thank you for the fruit," I said softly. His smile was warm, almost fatherly. "Fresh things taste better when shared," he replied. "And your boys remind me of someone I miss." He invited me over for tea the next afternoon. Normally, I would have refused. Trust wasn't easy after everything I'd been through. But something about him felt safe, like a person who didn't want anything from me. So the next day, I walked through the small gate between our yards, the boys following behind me. His home was filled with old photographs, wooden furniture, and an aroma of peppermint and lavender. It didn't feel lonely, it felt lived in, like love still lingered inside the walls. Over tea, he told us about his late wife, Marielle, a woman he described with a smile that carried years of devotion. Then he mentioned his sons, two men who lived only an hour away but rarely came to visit. Something tightened in his voice when he spoke of them, a mix of disappointment and unspoken hurt. Riven and Daxon listened with fascination, and before long, they were asking him questions about fishing, camping, and old times. By the end of the evening, they were calling him Grandpa Neighbor. That night, after putting the boys to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen feeling something I hadn't felt in months: comfort. Not happiness, not yet. But comfort. A sense that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone in this new town as I had feared. And though I didn't know it yet, the bond forming across that old wooden fence would soon reveal secrets from his past, secrets that would change all of our lives in ways we never expected. In the weeks that followed, a comfortable rhythm settled between our homes. Every evening after school, Riven and Daxon would run straight toward the little gate between our yards, eager to see Grandpa Neighbor. I would find them sitting on overturned buckets near his garden beds while he showed them how to plant seeds, fix wooden bird feeders, or tie fishing knots. Their laughter blended with the soft hum of the wind chimes on his porch. For the first time since the separation, my boys looked genuinely happy. I spent that time talking with Mr. Harris over tea, usually in his sunroom where sunlight stretched across the floor like a warm blanket. He asked gentle questions about my life, not in a nosy way, but like someone who cared. When I finally told him the truth about my marriage, the emotional manipulation, the betrayal, the nights I cried silently, he didn't judge me. He simply nodded and said, "Sometimes leaving isn't running away, it's choosing peace." Hearing that felt like someone had finally lifted a weight I had carried alone for too long. But as much as he shared his wisdom, I sensed there were things he wasn't saying. Whenever the topic of his sons came up, he would get quiet, sipping his tea with a distant look in his eyes. Once, he murmured, "People change when money whispers in their ear, even your own blood." I didn't push. Everyone has wounds they aren't ready to open. One Saturday morning, he invited us to a nearby lake for fishing. He insisted on driving us in his old green pickup truck, which rattled every time he turned a corner. The boys sat in the back seat, singing loudly and terribly, and Mr. Harris laughed so hard tears formed in the corners of his eyes. At the lake, he showed the boys how to cast a line and told stories of his childhood, hiking through forests, building rafts with his brothers, falling in love with Marielle during a county fair. I watched him, noticing how the boys clung to every word. They'd never had a grandfather figure. And he seemed like a man rediscovering parts of himself he thought were gone. As we packed up to leave, he pulled me aside and said quietly, "Sheila, thank you for letting me be part of your family." The honesty in his voice nearly broke me. "No," I whispered, "thank you for giving us a chance to feel whole again." But peace never stays untouched, not in real life. Just when everything felt stable, something unexpected happened. One afternoon, while the boys and I baked cookies, there was a loud knock at the door. A stern-looking man stood outside with a leather jacket and cold eyes. Behind him was a woman with perfectly combed hair and an expression carved from stone. "We're looking for Aldrich Harris," the man said. "We heard he's been entertaining strangers." My stomach twisted. These had to be his sons, though they looked nothing like the gentle old man who shared tea and stories with us. Their faces were tense, their voices sharp, like people who came not out of concern but out of irritation. "He's inside," I said carefully. "But maybe warn him before you." They were already walking past me without permission. I followed them to Mr. Harris's living room, where he sat reading a newspaper. When he looked up and saw them, the color drained from his face. "Aldrich," the woman snapped, "why didn't you answer our calls?" The man added, "We heard you've been giving things away again." My heart dropped. Giving things away again? Mr. Harris tried to maintain calm, but his hands shook slightly. "I'm allowed to have friends," he said softly. "Friends?" the woman scoffed, glaring at me. "Dad, this single mother and her kids are taking advantage of you. First it's fruit baskets, then tea, then fishing, what next? Your property? Your money?" I felt my cheeks burn with humiliation and anger. "We've never asked for anything," I said firmly. But they didn't listen. They argued with him, accusing him of being irresponsible, claiming he wasn't thinking clearly, insisting they needed access to his accounts before he did something stupid. The boys stood silently at my side, confused and frightened. Finally, Mr. Harris raised his voice, a sound I had never heard from him before. "That is enough. Sheila and the boys are part of my life, whether you approve or not." His sons exchanged looks that carried irritation and something darker, something greedy. They left shortly after, slamming the door behind them. The house trembled with the impact. When the dust settled, Mr. Harris sat heavily on the couch, rubbing his temples. "I'm sorry you saw that," he murmured. I sat beside him. "You don't have to apologize for their behavior." He looked at me with tired eyes. "They only come when they think something is at stake." A quiet pause followed. Then he added something that made my heart sink. "I fear they'll try to take control of everything, including my choices." That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because something about his son's visit didn't sit right with me. Their urgency, their tone, that strange comment about him giving things away again. It felt less like a family dispute and more like a warning shot. A storm was approaching, one that could break the fragile peace we had built. Still, none of us expected what would happen just a few days later. Early one morning, Riven shook me awake, panicked. "Mom! Grandpa neighbor isn't answering the door." I rushed outside, still in my slippers, knocking repeatedly. No response. The boys were on the verge of tears. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. I didn't wait another second. I grabbed the spare key Mr. Harris had given me, only in emergencies, and opened his front door. The house was silent, too silent for a man who usually hummed old songs in the morning. When I reached his bedroom, I found him lying on the floor beside his bed, barely conscious, his breathing shallow and uneven. My heart dropped into my stomach. "Mr. Harris. Aldrich, can you hear me?" He blinked weakly. "Sheila. I didn't want to bother you." An ambulance arrived within minutes, and the boys clung to my arms as the paramedics worked. At the hospital, doctors confirmed he had suffered a severe respiratory infection that had gone unnoticed for too long. He needed close monitoring, and they weren't sure how quickly he would recover. I sat beside his bed for hours, holding his hand while Riven and Daxon drew pictures to tape on the wall. "You're not alone," I whispered. "Not anymore." Later that evening, his sons arrived at the hospital, faces stiff, voices clipped. They barely acknowledged us. Instead, they spoke to the doctor in hushed tones, their expressions shifting between concern and calculation. When they stepped out, I heard fragments of their conversation. Power of attorney. Estate value. He's vulnerable. Ice crawled through my veins. They weren't worried about losing their father. They were worried about losing control. In the following days, the boys and I stayed by his side. We read to him, brought him soup, and helped the nurses whenever we could. Slowly, he began to regain strength. His smile returned, faint but genuine, especially when the boys told him silly jokes or handed him drawings of gardens and fishing trips. One afternoon, he grabbed my hand and whispered, "Thank you for giving me what my own children couldn't, company, warmth, and sincerity." But the peace didn't last. His son stormed into the room the next morning with a stack of legal papers, slamming them onto a table. "We're moving Dad to a private facility," the older one snapped. "It's safer. And we need him to sign these documents before something else happens." Mr. Harris looked terrified. I stepped between them instinctively. "He doesn't want to go anywhere. And you can't force him." The younger son scoffed. "You think you know what's best for him? You've known him for what, weeks?" His tone carried accusation, resentment, and greed. Before I could respond, Mr. Harris spoke firmly, "Sheila knows my heart better than you ever tried to." The room fell silent. His son stared at him in disbelief, insulted that their father chose a stranger over them. That's when the older one snapped, "So it's true, you're giving them things again. You're repeating the same mistake you made with Mom's inheritance." I froze. "Mom's inheritance?" With trembling breath, Mr. Harris explained. Years ago, after his wife died, he decided to donate part of her inheritance to her favorite charities, causes she loved deeply. His sons, expecting the wealth for themselves, had never forgiven him. "It wasn't about money," he said, voice breaking. "It was about honoring the woman who gave me my life." But they couldn't understand that. The truth stung more than I expected, not because of the inheritance, but because I finally understood how lonely he had been. His sons demanded he sign the papers. He refused. They threatened legal action. A shouting match erupted, spilling into the corridors. Nurses intervened, and security escorted them outside. That night, Mr. Harris apologized endlessly, worried he had dragged us into a storm we didn't deserve. But I held his hand and said, "Families protect the people they love. And you're part of ours." 2 weeks later, his condition worsened. The doctors explained that his body was tired, and he was slipping faster than they hoped. On a quiet evening, the boys and I sat with him in his dimly lit room. He asked the boys to come closer and whispered to them stories about bravery, kindness, and doing the right thing even when it's hard. Then he looked at me. "Sheila, promise me you'll plant something in my garden every spring." I nodded, tears blurring my vision. "And promise me you'll keep going, even on the days you feel alone. You're stronger than you think." In his final week, he made a decision that stunned the entire neighborhood. He revised his will, not for money, not for property, but for something far more meaningful. He left the garden to us. Not the house. Not the valuables. Just the garden, the place where memories had bloomed, where healing had begun, where love had taken root again. His lawyer explained, he said the garden belonged to the people who made it come alive again. The day he passed, the town gathered in silence. The boys cried openly, and I held them close. His sons showed up, but their faces were familiar, angry, bitter, humiliated. They learned that their father had chosen love over blood, sincerity over greed, loyalty over obligation. They tried arguing, threatening, questioning, but the will was airtight. All we received was the garden. And yet, it felt like the most precious gift we'd ever been given. Weeks later, I stood in the garden with the boys. The roses he trimmed, the soil he tended, the wind chimes he hung, all of it felt like echoes of the man who filled the empty spaces in our hearts. Riven whispered, "Mom, does this mean he really thought of us as family?" I placed my hand on his shoulder. He didn't just think it, he knew it. And as we planted new flowers in his honor, I realized something powerful. Family isn't always the one you come from, it's the one you build, the one that chooses you, the one that heals you when the world breaks you apart. Across that old wooden fence, a man had shown us love, kindness, and strength. And in return, we gave him something priceless. A second family, right when he needed it most. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more emotional family stories. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Have you ever met someone who felt like family even without blood relations? And please share this video with anyone who might need a reminder that kindness can change lives. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the family you choose is the one that saves you.